Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something we all navigate, close friendships.
Hmm.
But we're not just talking about who our friends are. We're diving into the fascinating differences in how men and women build and, crucially, keep these important relationships strong.
Yeah, the maintenance part.
Exactly. We've got a really rich source for this, a study surveying, I think, over 750 adults in the UK.
That's right. A good sample size.
So get ready for some possibly surprising insights into our social worlds.
Exactly. We often focus on, attraction, how friendships form initially.
Right.
But this study really digs into the psychological glue, you could say, that holds these inner circles together. Our aim is, well, to offer you a new lens, maybe, to view your own friendships and the dynamics you see around you.
And that's the mission for this deep dive, to really understand what this research tells us about the distinct social landscapes men and women inhabit when it comes to friendship. Okay, so the study starts by underscoring just how vital these close connections are. They talk about the support clique.
Right, the support clique.
Yes.
That core group.
Yeah, that core group of about, 5 people?
Right.
The ones who are your go-to for emotional and social support.
And the impact of this small group is, well, it's huge. Research consistently links the size, the stability of your support clique to your mental health, your physical well-being,
Wow.
even playing a role in longevity. It's significant,
So these are the relationships we really invest in.
deeply, yeah. And within this clique, you often find that particularly special bond,
Mm.
the best friend forever,
Right.
like the really close platonic confidant.
Right. Those are the people you can truly count on. And what's interesting about this particular study, as you said, is its focus. Not how we connect initially or who makes the cut,
Yeah.
but the psychological traits that allow us to maintain those strong bonds over time.
That's the key.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The big picture finding is that, while men and women differ quite a bit,
Hmm.
considerably, in the nature of their close friendships, even in the fundamental structure of their social networks.
And what's fascinating is how early these differences show up. It's not just an adult thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, social networks show strong sex-based patterns across all ages. Even in childhood, you see girls tending towards smaller, more intimate groups, often pairs what the study calls dyads.
Diets, okay.
Their interactions tend to be more focused on, sharing emotional connection.
Whereas right from the start, boys often form larger groups, maybe centered around activities like team sports or shared adventures.
Exactly. Think games, activities. It's like even early on, the foundations are being laid for the adult patterns we see later.
That makes sense.
The study suggests that male friendships often feel more casual and club-like. The shared interest or activity is the main draw, the primary way they connect.
That definitely rings a bell with some of the guys I know. It always seems to revolve around the game or the activity itself.
Right. And female friendships, in contrast,
Yeah.
tend to be more dyadic, really emphasizing that one-on-one connection, a deeper level of intimacy, perhaps.
So different focuses.
And this difference in focus also shows up in how their close networks are structured. Men's close networks are often described as wheel-like.
Wheel-like, how so?
Like everyone in the group knows and interacts with pretty much everyone else. Think of a central hub with spokes, but everyone on the rim is connected too.
Ah, okay, like a regular gaming group or a hiking crew. Everyone's connected through that central shared thing.
Precisely. Which might make it easier for men to find support within the group for those shared activities,
Right.
but potentially less so for, say, individual emotional crises if the main focus is the activity.
Okay, I see. Now, women's networks, according to the study, tend to be more of a hub and spoke model.
That's the term they use, yeah.
So that's where you might have several close friends, but they don't necessarily know each other well.
Exactly. They're all connected to you, the hub.
You could have your work friends, your book club friends, your family friends.
Right, and while they're all important to you, they might exist in kind of separate spheres.
Okay.
And this structural difference might also play a role in why the study suggests that women's friendships can sometimes be a bit more fragile.
Fragile. Why fragile?
Well, it could be related to the greater displays of empathy often seen in female friendships. While empathy deepens bonds, you see.
Yeah.
It can also make them more vulnerable when one friend is going through a tough time. It potentially impacts the whole dynamic more intensely.
Ah, that makes sense. If you're deeply emotionally invested, there's perhaps more potential for ripples, complexities when things get challenging.
Exactly. More moving parts, emotionally speaking.
Now let's zoom out a little bit. So we're seeing these differences in network structure, But what about the reasons behind why men and women might form friendships differently? The study also explores some interesting evolutionary perspectives.
Right. The why behind the what.
Yeah. The idea is that historically, men needing to form strong bonds for group defense, huggy parties, protecting communities,
Collective action.
that might have favored those larger, maybe less intensely personal group connections.
And for women, the need for a really trusted confidant, especially for reproductive support,
Okay.
particularly in environments where maybe other group members were more closely related to their partners, could have driven the development of those deeper, more intimate one-on-one friendships.
Wow. It's fascinating to think about how different survival pressures might have shaped our social tendencies over time.
It really is. How much of our modern-day friendship patterns are still echoes of those ancient needs?
Right. And the study even touches on some neuroimaging evidence, suggesting men and women might actually process social information using different neural circuits in the brain.
Yeah, this is a really intriguing area, still ongoing research, of course.
Of course.
But it hints at fundamental biological differences that might contribute to these observed social patterns. The study suggests women might have a greater capacity, potentially, to integrate socially relevant information from various sources
Okay.
and evaluate their relationships, both romantic and platonic, in more sort of nuanced, complex ways than men typically do.
So it's not just about different social preferences. There might be some really fundamental differences in how we're wired to navigate the social world.
It's possible.
Uh,
It's certainly what some of this evidence suggests.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of the support clique itself. The study found women generally report having larger support cliques than men.
Yes, that was a clear finding.
The average was around 8.8 people for women compared to 7.16 for men. That's a pretty noticeable gap, isn't it?
It is. And the way clique size changes with age is also quite interesting.
How so?
In the early 20s, the average size is fairly similar for both sexes. But then men's clique size tends to decrease more rapidly as they age,
Oh, interesting.
eventually converging with women's again later in life, around the age of 50 and beyond.
So these core support networks evolve along different timelines for men and women.
Okay.
Now, let's dig into the psychological factors that seem to predict the size of these cliques for each sex.
Right. What drives the numbers?
Interestingly, age itself and an avoidance attachment style.
Which is that discomfort with closeness, right?
Yeah.
Reluctance to invest deeply.
Exactly. Those are negatively correlated with clique size for both men and women. So older people and more avoidant people tend to have smaller cliques.
That makes intuitive sense.
And a strong sense of community bonding, that feeling of connection to your wider community, that's a positive predictor for both.
So those are some common threads, shared factors.
But here's where the sex-specific insights really emerge. For women, agreeableness.
That tendency to be cooperative, kind, compassionate,
Yeah, that's positively correlated with their support clique size.
which suggests that women who are more sort of pro-social in their interactions tend to cultivate and maintain larger inner circles.
Seems logical. They're good at fostering those positive connections.
Exactly. But for men, the predictors look quite different.
Okay.
Emotional cue recognition measured by that reading the mind in the eyes task.
Oh yeah, the RMET, where you guess emotions from photos of eyes.
That's the one. That ability is positively correlated with men's clique size.
So it seems men who are more attuned to subtle social signals might be better at navigating and maintaining their close friendships.
Possibly, yeah. But then impulsivity, sexual promiscuity, and even satisfaction with their romantic relationships are all negatively correlated with men's support clique size.
Whoa, okay, that's quite a mix. Impulsivity, promiscuity, relationship satisfaction, all linked to smaller cliques for men.
It really is, and it suggests different underlying dynamics at play. For women, it seems more about those positive pro-social behaviors, helping them build and sustain wider support networks.
Right.
For men, the size of their clique appears to be more negatively linked to certain traits that might be perceived as less reliable or stable in a close friend, like impulsivity and promiscuity.
That makes some sense.
Also, it's possible that men who are very invested in their romantic relationship might focus their social energy primarily there, leading to a smaller circle of other close friends.
Ah, okay. So it highlights a potential link between perceived reliability and maintaining male friendship circles.
Seems plausible. It's almost like women build their support network through positive connection,
Yeah.
whereas for some men, perhaps avoiding certain behaviors helps maintain those close ties. It's a different angle.
Fascinating. Okay, now let's talk about the structure of these cliques. The study looked at homophily and connectedness. Can you break those down for us again?
Certainly. Homophily in this context is about similarity. It's the degree of similarity among the members of a person's support clique.
Like shared interests, backgrounds, values.
Exactly. Things like that. And the study found that men's cliques tend to be more homophilous than women's.
So men's close friends are more likely to be sort of birds of a feather compared to women's close friends.
That's what the data suggests, yeah.
Okay. What predicts this homophily for each sex?
Well, for men, an avoidance attachment style, interestingly, is negatively correlated with homophily, as are community bonding and sexual promiscuity.
Huh. That's a bit complex. So men who are less avoidant, more community bonded, and maybe less promiscuous tend to have more diverse friend groups. Less homophilous.
That seems to be the implication, yes.
Yeah.
It's a bit counterintuitive, perhaps, on the avoidance front, but that's the finding.
Okay. And for women?
For women, age, openness to new experiences, sexual promiscuity, and avoidance attachment are all negatively correlated with homophily.
So similar factors, but maybe operating differently.
Well, the correlations were generally weaker than for men. It seems like a broader range of factors might contribute to the diversity we often see in women's friendship circles.
Got it. Okay, now let's move on to connectedness.
Right. Which is how well the members of a person's support clique actually know each other.
Okay.
The study's finding here was only marginally significant, statistically speaking, but it suggested that men's cliques tend to be more interconnected than women's.
Which definitely fits with that wheel-like structure we talked about earlier, right? Where everyone in the group knows and interacts.
Exactly. It aligns with that model.
Makes sense if the friendships are often activity-based, there's just more opportunity for everyone to interact together.
That's likely part of it.
So what predicts this connectedness?
Well, for both sexes, age was negatively correlated. Younger individuals tend to have more interconnected cliques.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe social circles shrink or solidify with age.
Perhaps. But again, the sex-specific predictors are revealing. For men, impulsivity was positively correlated with connectedness.
Really? More impulsive men have more interconnected friends.
That's what it showed. While sexual promiscuity was negatively correlated.
Okay, so the less promiscuous, more impulsive guys have friend groups where everyone knows each other. How does that work?
Well, one interpretation, maybe. Perhaps men who are more impulsive are more likely to just spontaneously introduce their different friends to each other, just throw everyone together.
Ah, okay. Less compartmentalizing.
Possibly. Whereas those with more casual sexual relationships might consciously or unconsciously keep their different social spheres more separate.
Right, like different compartments of their social life. Interesting thought. What about for women?
For women, openness to new experiences and clique size were negatively correlated with connectedness.
So more open women, or women with larger cliques, have friends who know each other less well.
Seems so. And anxiety attachment, that fear of rejection, strong need for reassurance was positively correlated.
Okay, unpack that. Why would anxious attachment lead to more connected friends for women?
Well, it might suggest that women with larger, more diverse friendship groups linked to openness and size might simply find it logistically harder for everyone to know each other well.
Just practicalities.
Yeah. And those with anxious attachment styles might actively try to foster connections between their different friends, maybe as a way to feel more secure in their own relationships with them, creating a unified support system.
Ah, bringing everyone into the fold for security. Okay. So men's interconnectedness seems tied more to behavioral tendencies like impulsivity, while women's might be more influenced by the sheer size and diversity of their network and perhaps those underlying attachment styles.
That seems to be the pattern emerging here, yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, the study also delved into best friendships, capital B, capital F.
Yes. The BFF.
And the findings here were quite striking, weren't they?
They really were. The study found women are significantly more likely to report having a best platonic friend than men.
Significantly?
Yeah, almost 75% of women compared to just under 60% of men. That's a pretty substantial difference.
It really is. 15% gap, roughly. Wow. And the age trends are interesting, too, you mentioned.
Very. Men become more likely to have a best friend as they get older, whereas women become less likely.
Wait. Really? It's a reverse trajectory. Women are less likely to have a BFF as they age.
That's what this study found, yeah.
Wow, that's really counterintuitive. Why? Why do you think that shift happens? Any ideas from the study?
That's a great question. The study doesn't explicitly spell out the why there, but we can speculate a bit.
Okay.
One possibility is that as men age, maybe particularly after retirement, or as family dynamics shift, they might have more time or inclination to really invest in one very close friendship.
Okay. And for women?
For women, perhaps as they navigate career, family responsibilities across midlife, the sheer intensity required for that best friend label might evolve. Or maybe those needs get met by a slightly wider but still close network.
That makes sense. The definition or need might shift.
Could be, and consistent with earlier findings, best friendships are strongly sex-biased.
Right. Women's best friends are overwhelmingly female, men's predominantly male.
And this preference stays pretty constant across adulthood.
Okay. Interestingly, though, both men and women are less likely to have a best friend when they're in a romantic relationship.
Yes, that came through too.
Maybe that romantic partner fulfills some of the same needs for that intense emotional connection and support.
That's a very plausible explanation, I think. The partner takes on some of that confidant role.
Right. The study also looked at when people typically meet their best friends.
It did. For both men and women, same-sex best friends are often met around the late teens or early 20s.
That period of intense social exploration, university, first jobs.
Exactly. But opposite-sex best friends tend to come along a bit later in life. And the timing differs between the sexes.
How so?
Women tend to meet their female best friends earlier than they meet their male best friends. For men, it's the other way around. They tend to meet male best friends earlier than female best friends.
Huh. That difference in timing. Maybe it reflects evolving social circles or perhaps a greater openness to opposite-sex platonic relationship at different life stages for men versus women.
Could be. Different social opportunities or priorities at different times.
Okay. Now let's look at the predictors of having a best friend at all. What makes someone more likely to have one?
Right. For women, age and avoidance attachment are negatively correlated.
So younger women and less avoidant women are more likely.
Correct. While empathizing abilities, their EQ score and anxiety attachment are positive predictors.
Okay, so higher empathy and higher anxiety attachment predict having a best friend for a woman.
Yes, suggesting that younger women who are more empathetic and potentially a bit anxious in relationships are more likely to form and maintain that specific best friend bond, while those who avoid closeness are less likely.
Interesting mix there with the anxiety. Okay, what about for men?
For men, the picture is simpler, fewer predictors. Both anxiety and avoidance attachment are negatively correlated with having a best friend.
So men who are less anxious and less avoidant in relationships are more likely to have that close platonic connection.
That's right.
It's almost the opposite of the anxiety correlation for women, isn't it?
It is. Which might reflect different ways men and women seek or perhaps maintain those close emotional bonds or what they need from them.
Interesting. Now, what about having an opposite-sex best friend, that specific dynamic? The study looked into factors making that more likely.
Yes, and this is where it gets really nuanced.
Okay.
Women were more likely to have a male best friend if they scored lower on emotional cue recognition, that R.I.M score again.
Lower ability to read eyes. Yeah.
Were less community bonded, less impulsive, and had high avoidance attachment.
Whoa, that's quite a specific profile. Low emotion reading, less tied to community, not impulsive, but high avoidance.
It is specific. It suggests maybe that women with male best friends might exhibit some traits sometimes more typically associated with men, or perhaps they're less deeply embedded in their local female social networks.
That paints a vivid picture.
Okay.
What about for men with female best friends?
For men, the only significant predictor of having a female best friend was high avoidance attachment.
Just the high avoidance, that's intriguing. Why might that be?
Well, speculation again, but it might suggest that men who struggle perhaps with close emotional intimacy in romantic relationships find a less demanding, maybe, but still supportive connection with a female best friend.
Very interesting, almost like the dynamic offers a different kind of emotional safety or space for them.
Could be a different type of intimacy.
Okay. Finally, the study explored emotional closeness and support from best friends, and the findings highlighted an interaction between the individual sex and their best friend's sex. Can you unpack that?
Certainly. What they found was that women tended to view their male and female best friends pretty similarly.
Yeah.
In terms of emotional closeness, the support they provided, not much difference reported.
Okay. Women see closeness similarly regardless of the best friend's sex.
Generally, yes. However, men reported feeling significantly less emotionally close to their male best friends compared to their female best friends.
Ah, that's a key difference. So men feel closer emotionally to their female best friends than their male ones?
That's what this data suggests, yes.
No.
It implies men might derive a different kind of emotional support, or maybe just a different perceived level of it, from their same-sex versus opposite-sex best friends.
It almost suggests that for some men, a female best friend might fulfill a more emotionally intimate role than a male best friend typically does, based on these self-reports.
Exactly. It reinforces this whole idea that the nature, the function of best friendships can differ quite a bit between men and women, and also depending on the sex of the friend.
Okay, wow. Lots to think about there. So let's step back and maybe look at some of the key takeaways, the broader implications of all this research.
Sounds good.
I mean, the study really underscores, doesn't it, that men's and women's social worlds, especially around friendship, are organized in fundamentally different ways.
It really does. And the researchers connect this back to that warriors versus warriors concept we touched on.
Right, the idea that different evolutionary pressures might have shaped these contrasting social styles, men needing to be those resilient group protectors,
The warriors.
and women needing that close, reliable support for the challenges of reproduction, the worriers, maybe. Though that term feels a bit loaded.
It does feel a bit simplified, but it captures that core idea of different historical pressures leading to different social strategies.
Ah,
And it's important to remember, these aren't necessarily better or worse ways of being social,
just different.
just different. The study draws a parallel to, like, introvert and extrovert social styles, different but equally effective ways to navigate the social landscape, usually.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
However, the study does highlight a potential concern, that decline in best friendships for older women we talked about.
Right.
Given how vital close social connections are for health, for well-being, this loss, if it's happening, could have negative consequences if those needs aren't being met elsewhere in their network.
That's a really important point to consider, especially for health outcomes.
Absolutely. And the study also, touched on those intriguing opposite-sex best friendships,
Yeah.
hinting at the possibility of feminized traits, perhaps, in men with female best friends, and masculinized traits in women with male best friends, which certainly warrants more research into how these dynamics might influence personality, social behavior.
Absolutely. It suggests a level of complexity and nuance in these relationships that goes way beyond simple gender dynamics.
Totally agree.
So, to really boil it down, the most striking differences revealed by this deep dive seem to be women's tendency towards larger but less interconnected support cliques, maybe driven by those pro-social tendencies,
Agreeableness playing a role.
and men's smaller but more interconnected cliques, which seem more linked to, well, lower antisocial tendencies maybe, lower impulsivity, lower promiscuity predicting size.
Right, and different factors predicting connectedness. And of course, the greater likelihood and that reported emotional depth of best friendships for women compared to men, especially regarding same-sex friends for men.
Yeah, that closeness gap men reported.
And this raises, I think, an important question for you, the listener. Considering these fundamental differences in how men and women seem to approach friendship, how might a deeper understanding of these social styles improve our own interactions,
Good question.
and maybe our appreciation for the diverse ways people experience and value friendship? It might even prompt you to reflect on how you could better support the different friendship needs of the men and women in your own life, knowing they might be structured differently.
That's a fantastic point to ponder. Maybe take some time to reflect on your own friendship patterns. Do these findings resonate with your experiences? Have you observed these kinds of differences in the friendships around you?
Yeah.
This is definitely a rich area for personal exploration and could even spark some interesting conversations with your own friends, maybe.
Indeed. There's always more to learn about the fascinating complexities of human connection. It's endlessly interesting.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the intriguing world of friendship and social dynamics. We hope you found it as insightful as we did.